Charles Bronson, the iconic tough guy of Hollywood, led a life as gritty as the characters he played in films like The Magnificent Seven, The Great Escape, and the Death Wish series. Renowned for his stoic masculinity and vigilante roles, Bronson's real-life story is marked by hardship and unexpected tenderness. Born Charles Dennis Bukinski on November 3, 1921, in Ehrenfeld, Pennsylvania, he was one of 15 children in a poverty-stricken Lithuanian-American family, facing challenges like lack of running water and early work in the coal mines. His difficult upbringing shaped his fierce on-screen presence. Joining the U.S. Army Air Forces in 1943, he served as a nose gunner in World War II, earning a Purple Heart. Post-war, Bronson held various jobs until a chance as a set painter led him to acting. Adopting the stage name Charles Bronson in 1949, he sought success in Hollywood, overcoming his past to become a legendary figure in the film industry. Charles Bronson's journey to fame was gradual and marked by numerous minor roles throughout the 1950s, where he was often typecast as tough characters. His breakout role came in 1960 with The Magnificent Seven as Bernardo O'Reilly, paving the way for notable performances in The Great Escape and The Dirty Dozen. However, it was Death Wish in 1974 that truly defined his legacy as the vigilante Paul Kersey, a role resonating with audiences amidst urban unrest and resulting in 4 sequels. Despite his fame, Bronson remained private and reclusive, uncomfortable with celebrity life. His marriage to actress Jill Ireland, whom he met during The Great Escape, became a pivotal part of his life, showcasing his emotional depth, especially during her cancer battle that ended with her death in 1990. Bronson's own fears, particularly of confinement, echoed in his roles, particularly in The Great Escape. He passed away on August 30, 2003, leaving an indelible mark on cinema as the archetypal lone avenger. Charles Bronson, born Michael Gordon Peterson in 1952, became an iconic figure in Hollywood, embodying the tough, stoic hero. Long before achieving fame, he cultivated a fearsome reputation through numerous violent encounters. In his youth, Bronson was involved in street confrontations and even broke a sergeant's arm during a bar fight. One notorious incident involved a physical clash with a director, further solidifying his tough guy image. Though he eventually adopted the name Charles Bronson in 1987, inspired by Britain's notorious prison Hardman, he sought more than just a violent identity. Bronson aimed for a persona that carried weight in both the criminal underworld and cinematic realms. This transformation marked his emergence as a figure synonymous with toughness, violence, and unyielding resolve, shaping the archetype of the no-nonsense hero. With his complex background and formidable presence, Bronson became a legend both on and off screen, making him someone no one dared to confront. Esquire magazine once quoted Bronson as saying he would take down anyone who dared to harm his family, a statement that sent shockwaves through the media. Even Johnny Carson, the iconic late-night host, couldn't resist asking him about it. Bronson, ever the enigmatic figure, gave a blunt response. "Because that's what I said." There was no sugarcoating, no smiles, just the cold, hard honesty of a man who didn't care for pleasantries. This directness was a hallmark of Bronson's public life. He wasn't interested in being liked by the press or the public. To him, the media's questions were nothing more than probing annoyances, and film critics were often dismissed as individuals who hadn't even paid to see the films they criticized. Roger Ebert, the renowned critic, once interviewed him and observed the intensity in Bronson's eyes, a subtle hint of the violence simmering beneath the surface. Bronson, however, didn't shy away from confrontations. If he felt wronged, whether by a director or a fellow actor, he was quick to let them know. One notable incident involved a heated exchange with director Nicholas Jester, with Bronson openly criticizing him and even joking about the violent altercations that had taken place off-screen. Those who worked with Bronson often recounted stories of his fiery temper. His wife, Jill Ireland, who had been by his side for many years, was well aware of his short fuse. On one TV show appearance, she laughed it off, acknowledging that Bronson's temper was just part of who he was. Despite the laughs, it was clear to anyone who crossed paths with him that his volatility was as much a part of his legacy as his screen presence. Directors, too, had their own stories to tell. Bronson often found it difficult to work with Hollywood's high-maintenance directors, attributing much of the tension to what he referred to as the nonsense of the industry. The tough guy persona that defined him on screen was reflected in his real-life interactions with those behind the camera. For instance, Don Siegel, the director of Telephone, recalled an amusing incident in which actress Lee Remick hesitated to touch Bronson's face during a scene. She feared he might bite her, a testament to the formidable reputation Bronson had cultivated over the years. During the making of Hard Times, a gritty Depression-era film directed by Walter Hill, Bronson's physical conditioning was put to the test. Hill, who was impressed by Bronson's strength, couldn't help but notice the toll that Bronson's smoking had on his stamina. Tensions also arose over the editing of scenes involving Bronson's wife, Jill Ireland. Yet, despite the friction, Hill and Bronson eventually reached an understanding, further underscoring the unpredictable nature of Bronson's temperament. Even A-list directors like Sean Penn experienced the challenge of working with Bronson. On the set of The Indian Runner, Penn discovered firsthand just how stubborn and particular Bronson could be. One of the more amusing instances occurred when Bronson refused to let his character die on screen, fearing it might disappoint his Italian fans. The man who had made a career out of playing tough, unflinching characters wasn't about to let his on-screen death tarnish his legacy. Billy Crystal, too, had his own unforgettable encounter with Bronson. When Crystal sent Bronson the script for City Slickers, he was taken aback when Bronson called him up, furious that his character was slated to die. "Charles Bronson doesn't die in movies," he famously told Crystal, a playful nod to his role in the Death Wish series, where death and vengeance seemed to go hand in hand. Speaking of Death Wish, few films have been as controversial or as influential in shaping Bronson's career. Directed by Michael Winner, Death Wish was released in 1974, becoming an instant box office success. With its provocative storyline about a man who takes the law into his own hands after a tragedy strikes his family, the film generated widespread debate. Critics were divided, with some accusing the film of glorifying vigilantism, while others saw it as a powerful commentary on the breakdown of society. Charles Bronson's journey to stardom was anything but conventional. His rise to fame in Hollywood, particularly with his role as Paul Kersey in Death Wish, is one of the more fascinating stories of an actor whose path to the top was fraught with unexpected twists and turns. Despite fierce resistance from some of the biggest names in the industry, such as Clint Eastwood, Frank Sinatra, and Henry Fonda, who all turned down the role, Bronson's unyielding drive and passion for the part made him the perfect fit for the character. The film, which carried a modest budget of $3.7 million, would go on to earn a staggering $22 million at the box office. The impact of Death Wish was undeniable. Bronson's portrayal of Paul Kersey, a mild-mannered architect who transforms into a vengeful vigilante, became legendary. However, this success wasn't without its fair share of critics. Henry Fonda, an established Hollywood titan, dismissed the film as repulsive, and many others voiced concerns about the film's violent undertones and the message it conveyed to the audience. Yet Bronson, steadfast in his defense of Death Wish, believed the film was far more than a glorification of revenge. In a remarkable demonstration of his understanding of the project's deeper themes, Bronson argued that the film wasn't about promoting vigilantism, but rather about exploring the devastating consequences of seeking retribution. He often referenced the famous proverb, "An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind," as a way to convey that Death Wish was, in his mind, a reflection on the darkness of revenge, not its endorsement. The film, according to Bronson, was a meditation on the human cost of violence, a message far more complex than the surface-level interpretation many critics had assigned to it. Interestingly, Death Wish was based on a novel by Brian Garfield, whose vision for the film was drastically different from what Bronson and the filmmakers ultimately created. Garfield had initially envisioned the film as a more cerebral, intellectual exploration of justice, with Jack Lemmon in the lead role. However, with Bronson's casting, the tone of the movie shifted dramatically. The gritty, no-nonsense nature that Bronson brought to the character imbued the film with an intensity that Garfield, to his dismay, hadn't planned for. In fact, Garfield was so displeased with Bronson's casting that he publicly expressed his disapproval, lamenting the shift away from his original vision. The film's director, Michael Winner, known for his blunt and often controversial opinions, did little to smooth over the tensions between himself and Garfield. Winner's unapologetic remarks about Garfield's novel, "Did you think you were writing a fairy tale?" only deepened the divide between the two. Despite these tensions, Death Wish became a cultural touchstone, with Bronson's performance becoming iconic. The success of the film led to a string of sequels, with Bronson reprising his role as Kersey 5 more times over the next 2 decades. However, Garfield, whose original book had sparked the controversy in the first place, was far from impressed with the sequels. He felt they were more about capitalizing on Bronson's star power than about continuing the meaningful narrative he had hoped for in the original work. As the years passed, Bronson's role in Death Wish became more than just a performance. It became part of a larger conversation about violence in film and its impact on society. The film's release coincided with a period of growing public concern about crime and violence in America, and Death Wish was both praised and vilified for its portrayal of a man who takes the law into his own hands. In 1984, the real-world case of Bernhard Goetz, the subway vigilante who shot 4 young men on a New York subway, brought the themes of Death Wish into sharp focus. Goetz claimed self-defense, and the media quickly seized on the story, dubbing him the subway vigilante. When asked about the incident, Michael Winner made a highly controversial remark, saying, "If he's got to shoot someone on the subway, why not?" The comment, widely regarded as tone-deaf, only served to deepen the public's scrutiny of the film and its violent message. The film's legacy didn't end with its original release. In fact, it took on a strange new life in the political sphere decades later. In 2015, during a rally, then-presidential candidate Donald Trump referenced Death Wish in a way that would have seemed unimaginable in the early days of the film's release. Trump, speaking about the possibility of self-defense, suggested that if anyone attacked him, he would shoot them. The crowd erupted in applause, chanting Bronson's name in approval. The connection between Trump's words and Bronson's film was clear, and the audience's reaction revealed how Death Wish had transcended its original intentions, becoming part of a larger cultural and political conversation. Trump went on to claim that the film could never be made today, calling it politically incorrect, a comment that highlighted how much the film's legacy had evolved and how deeply it resonated in the collective consciousness. What makes Bronson's involvement in Death Wish particularly fascinating is the way his own persona, one defined by unrelenting toughness, stoicism, and rugged masculinity, became intertwined with the very themes the film sought to explore. Bronson's portrayal of Kersey, the everyman who becomes a vengeful hero, struck a chord with audiences, but beneath that tough exterior, Bronson himself was far more complex than the character he portrayed on screen. Bronson's off-screen life revealed a man of surprising depth and nuance, someone whose passions and interests extended well beyond the violence that defined his cinematic career. For instance, while Bronson became synonymous with hard-edged roles in films like Death Wish and The Magnificent Seven, few knew of his quieter, more introspective side. Away from the cameras, Bronson was an avid artist, a painter and sculptor who sought solace in creating works of art. Despite his tough guy image, Bronson found peace in the act of creating, something that contrasted sharply with the brutal characters he was known for. He even painted under the pseudonym Binsky, hoping to keep his art separate from his Hollywood persona. His artwork, which was often deeply personal, found a market among those who appreciated its raw authenticity. Bronson's paintings sold well, and many critics came to respect him as an artist in his own right, further complicating the public's understanding of the man behind the iconic tough guy roles. But perhaps what defined Bronson the most was the way he balanced his personal life with his public image. Behind the stoic figure that millions of fans adored, Bronson was also a man who experienced great tragedy and love. His second wife, actress Jill Ireland, was a constant companion throughout much of his life, and their love story became the stuff of Hollywood legend. Yet their life together was marred by the devastating illness that ultimately took Ireland's life. She fought a courageous battle against breast cancer, but in 1990, she passed away, leaving Bronson heartbroken. Despite this profound loss, Bronson was not one to give up on love. He later found companionship with Kim Michelle Weeks, a younger actress who would stand by his side until his death in 2003. As Bronson's health began to decline in his later years, so too did his ability to maintain the tough guy persona that had been so central to his career. Suffering from heart disease and undergoing hip replacement surgery, Bronson eventually made the decision to retire from acting. But even in retirement, Bronson's life wasn't free from struggle. He was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, a cruel affliction that slowly took away the sharpness of mind that had once made him an indomitable force, both on screen and in life. On August 30th, 2003, Bronson passed away at the age of 81, leaving behind a legacy that would continue to shape the entertainment world long after his death. Charles Bronson's legacy is a testament to the complexity of the man himself, an actor whose tough exterior and no-nonsense attitude were matched only by the tenderness and depth of his personal life. He was more than just a vigilante on the silver screen. He was a man of many facets, each one as compelling as the roles he portrayed. His legacy continues to resonate with audiences, not just for the iconic characters he brought to life, but for the layers of complexity that lay hidden beneath his tough guy image, and that, perhaps, is the true measure of his lasting impact. Charles Bronson, born Charles Dennis Bukinski, is a name that resonates with power, resilience, and an unyielding presence. Known for his fierce roles in iconic films such as Death Wish and The Magnificent Seven, Bronson built an enduring reputation as a stoic and invincible figure on screen. Yet, the man behind the tough guy persona was far more complex and multifaceted than most people ever realized. Beneath the hard exterior forged from a lifetime of struggle, there lay an artist, a man of tenderness, and a person deeply in touch with the emotional and spiritual aspects of life. Raised in the unforgiving coal mining regions of Pennsylvania, Bronson's early life was anything but easy. Born into a poor family, he faced hardship from a young age, learning the value of hard work and perseverance. His father, a coal miner, was often absent, and his mother struggled to keep the family afloat. The brutal nature of the work and the poverty in which Bronson was raised shaped his character, pushing him to survive and thrive in an environment where many others would have crumbled. Yet, despite the harshness of his upbringing, there was a side of Bronson that remained hidden from the public eye. Beneath the rough exterior, Bronson possessed a profound appreciation for the finer things in life, things that many might not have expected from a man whose screen image was defined by violence and aggression. As a young man, Bronson began to develop a love for art, an interest that would stay with him throughout his life. While his Hollywood career cast him as the ultimate tough guy, Bronson's passion for painting and sculpting was deeply personal. Far from the aggressive roles he became famous for, these creative outlets allowed him to express a more introspective side of his personality. to keep his artistic work separate from his Hollywood persona. Bronson painted under the pseudonym Binsky, a name that allowed his art to be judged on its own merits, independent of his fame. Despite the anonymity, his art gained recognition, and Bronson found solace in creating works that spoke to his inner world. His paintings, ranging from landscapes to abstract works, were often a reflection of the things he valued most: beauty, tranquility, and depth. This side of Bronson, however, was often overshadowed by his tough guy image. Hollywood wanted the stoic, no-nonsense vigilante, and that was the persona the world came to know and love. But those who had the privilege of spending time with him, of getting past the hard exterior, knew a man who was far more than just a film star. When Bronson did speak about his roles, it was with a rare, understated eloquence that revealed his thoughtful nature. He didn't glorify the violence of his characters. Instead, he spoke about the human condition, about the complexities of life, and the choices people make when pushed to their limits. One of the most telling stories about Bronson's softer side involves a young Kurt Russell, who, at just 12 years old, discovered that it was Bronson's birthday. Eager to honor his idol, Russell went out of his way to find the perfect gift: a remote-controlled airplane. Initially, Bronson's response to the gesture was distant, perhaps even somewhat aloof, as he wasn't the type of man to display much outward emotion. However, months later, when Russell's birthday arrived, Bronson decided to return the kindness in a way that would forever cement their friendship. He gifted Russell a top-of-the-line skateboard, a far cry from the violent vigilantes he played on screen. This was not just a gift, it was a rare moment of true generosity. But the kindness didn't stop there. When a security guard tried to stop Russell from using the skateboard on the studio lot, Bronson stepped in, refusing to let the young actor be bullied. Instead, Bronson insisted they both ride the skateboard around the lot together. This seemingly small act of camaraderie revealed a different side of Bronson, a side that was rarely seen by the public. It was a side that contradicted the tough, hard-edged persona he had cultivated over the years. This simple act of kindness and solidarity showed that, despite his public image, Charles Bronson was a man capable of great warmth, kindness, and friendship. However, despite the kindness and tenderness he showed in his personal life, Bronson's life was not without its deep tragedies. Perhaps the most significant of these was the loss of his beloved second wife, Jill Ireland. Their love story was one marked by passion and strength, but it was also tinged with sorrow. Ireland, an accomplished actress in her own right, was best known for her roles in films such as Breakheart Pass and The Parallax View. She had a striking beauty that matched her talent, and the two shared a bond that was unbreakable, until the devastating news came that Ireland had been diagnosed with breast cancer. Bronson stood by her side through years of grueling treatments, always hoping for a miracle. But in 1990, after a long and painful battle, Ireland succumbed to the disease, leaving Bronson to grieve the loss of the woman he loved deeply. The emotional toll of her death was profound, as Bronson had already faced his share of hardship throughout his life. He was no stranger to loss, but the death of his second wife was a blow from which he would never fully recover. Despite his grief, however, Bronson showed a remarkable ability to find love again. In the years following Ireland's passing, he began a relationship with Kim Michelle Weeks, a younger actress who, like Ireland before her, would remain by his side until his death. Their relationship, though marked by the shadow of Ireland's memory, was a testament to Bronson's ability to rebuild his life after devastating loss. It was a reminder that even the strongest of men need love and companionship to navigate the most difficult of times. But in the final years of his life, Bronson's own health began to deteriorate. He had long struggled with heart disease, and in the 1990s, he underwent hip replacement surgery, which marked the beginning of his decision to step away from the spotlight. Bronson's health continued to decline, and in the early 2000s it became clear that he was fighting another, much crueler battle. He was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, a degenerative condition that slowly but surely took away his memory and his ability to recognize the world around him. As the man who had once been a symbol of toughness and resilience, Bronson was now facing a different kind of fight, a fight against the ravages of time and disease. Charles Bronson passed away on August 30th, 2003, at the age of 81. His death marked the end of an era in Hollywood, as one of the greatest action stars of all time left the stage for good. But his legacy, both as an actor and as a man, continues to resonate with fans and admirers around the world. He may have been known for his roles as a tough, no-nonsense action hero, but those who knew him best understood that there was much more to Charles Bronson than met the eye. Bronson's life was a testament to the complexities of the human spirit. He was a man who had endured unimaginable hardship and loss, yet he never gave up. He was a man who, despite his rough exterior, was capable of profound kindness and generosity. And he was a man who, despite the pain he experienced, continued to find love and purpose in the face of adversity. His story serves as a reminder that, behind every tough exterior, there is a person with depth, emotion, and a rich inner life, one that deserves to be understood and appreciated. In terms of family, Bronson had several children, including Zuleika, Tony, Suzanne, and Katrina Holden. While Katrina was later revealed to be adopted, she went on to make her own name in the entertainment industry as a film director, proving that the Bronson legacy was not confined to just one generation. Bronson's wealth at the time of his death was estimated to be around $75 million in today's terms, a testament to his shrewd business acumen. He had acquired numerous properties, including mansions and farms, and he frequently spoke with pride about the painting of Scoop Town, a piece he held dear to his heart. Despite his success, Bronson's life was marked by contradictions and complexity. The actor, who was once regarded as the quintessential tough guy, had a surprisingly vulnerable side, one that was shaped by loss, love, and a relentless desire to create. His life reminds us that even the hardest of exteriors can conceal a deeply emotional and multifaceted person. Behind the stoic face of Charles Bronson, there was a man who was as capable of tenderness as he was of ferocity, a man whose story continues to resonate with audiences long after his passing. As we look back on the life and legacy of Charles Bronson, it's clear that his journey was not just about the roles he played or the fame he achieved. It was about the person he was underneath the surface. His art, his relationships, and his quiet moments of kindness speak to the humanity that often went unnoticed amidst the chaos of Hollywood. Bronson's story is one of contrasts: strength and vulnerability, toughness and tenderness, love and loss. His life, as tumultuous and colorful as it was, serves as a reminder that every person has layers, and sometimes the hardest exterior can house the most complex soul.